admittedly, when I say read, I have read some physical books this year, but the majority of the books that I've read, I've actually listened to the audiobook. I will be the first to admit that I'm not a very strong reader. I've got ADHD and it's very difficult to keep my attention span on something for that long. But I love audiobooks. And I just thought that I would kind of talk about them, say what I liked about them. I've written a list of all of the books that I've read this year in here. This little bear notebook. So we can go over them together and discuss and ramble and relax. So, the type of books that I've read this year have been a mix of parenting books, some self-helpy stuff, mainly fantasy. It's a very odd mix of things. I've got a dog here that I'm babysitting who's very whiny right now. So the first book that I read was this. This is Beyond the Rainbow Bridge, Nurturing Our Children from Birth to 7 by Barbara J. Patterson and Pamela Bradley. This was a recommendation from, I don't know if you guys know Becca Martinez. She's like an influencer kind of girl. And this is a book on Waldorf parenting. And I really enjoyed this book. Personally, though, my goodness, this dog. Okay, settled. When reading any type of parenting, self-help, or kind of like lifestyle book in general, I think it's very, very important to hold your own personal values close and read through your own lens, because every person, everyone's lives, every child is different, and knowledge cannot just be applied to everyone, I guess. So I think my ratings of these books are very much of kind of the lessons that I feel like the takeaway that I got from them, not necessarily like the information that was in these books, because there are some religious elements in some of these books that I am not personally religious, so I kind of just interpret those to, I guess, what I think they mean, or so, So I gave this book an 8 out of 10. I found it very interesting. It was a good read. It was easy to get through. I think there was a lot of like good information and kind of values in here. I wonder if that rating will have changed because I've read a couple other parenting books this year as well. But this was one of the first that I've ever read, so the rating might be a bit high simply because I don't have any standards to compare it to, I guess. But I did really like it. I think it was a good kind of guide on what Waldorf, I guess, like, I'm sorry about that. like the Waldorf education, I guess is the word, or like philosophy is about. So for that reason I did enjoy it, but I definitely would not read any of these books and think of it as like, you know, the handbook essentially. So the next book that I read was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And this book I gave a 9.5 out of 10 simply because of the way I feel like it impacted my personal life. Reading this book was something that was kind of like a game changer to where I was at earlier this year and kind of my decisions moving forward. I think it explained mindfulness in a way that I guess made a lot of sense to me, but I definitely think that this book is a big example of reading it through your own lens because, I mean, there's a lot of like Buddhist beliefs and kind of very spiritual things that a lot of us probably don't practice in our everyday lives. So you have to read it and kind of, I guess, take away what you take away from it. But the reason the rating is so high is because of kind of like what it did for me, I guess. I don't know. The next book I don't have a physical copy of because I borrowed it. I actually read it. My boss bought the physical book and I read it because the next book is called Oh Crap, Potty Training. And this is maybe like a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. It was kind of the approach to potty training that we decided to take, or she decided to take, and so that's why I read the book, to kind of follow that so we're all on the same page. But I didn't like the way the book was written. It kind of felt like an overly casual blog post, if that makes sense. Like, there was a lot of just things that were, I found, like, unnecessary. I would have rathered it be more straightforward, I think. But overall, in general, I think there's a lot of, like, theories and stuff that were very interesting. Also, having practiced the potty training method, like, the way it's kind of pitched in the book is very, like, you know, the woman who wrote it is like a potty training expert. Like, that's her job, is she potty trains other people's kids. So she wrote this basically being like, this is the guidebook, this is like da-da. But I think that in practice, although I do believe it works and I like the way she's thinking, children are so much more difficult to actually potty train, I guess, in real life. So the next book that I read, but I didn't actually finish, I do eventually want to finish it, but I kind of moved on to other things before I could, is Simplicity Parenting. And it says, using the extraordinary power of less to raise calmer, happier, and more secure kids, by Kim John Payne, MED, with Lisa M. Ross. This was actually one of the parenting books recommended in the potty training book. But so far, what I have read of this, I didn't give it a rating because I didn't finish it. But I actually really, really, really like this one. I think kind of the idea of less is more and simplifying it is such a breath of fresh air in a culture where you're constantly getting so much information constantly. So for that reason, it kind of felt very reassuring. There was a quote in this book that I really liked, and it is, "Our children come to us with a deep destiny that needs to be honored." And I read that while traveling, and I was on a train and I started to tear up because I think that is such a beautiful way of putting it. I think one of these things that I take away is that children are their own people. They're not you, they're not me, they're not whatever. They are their own little human beings who need to be supported, and just our children come to us with a deep destiny that needs to be honored, I just felt was such a beautiful way of putting that. So I really liked that. That is not a quote from him. I think he's like a child psychologist and who wrote this book, and that was just a quote that was from somewhere else, but he said he keeps it in his wallet to remind him of like the reason why and like his values and stuff towards children. Okay, I promise the majority of parenting books are over. You've gotten through the bulk of them. I'm so sorry to people that don't have any interest in childcare or parenting. Like, I'm so sorry. It's my job. I do read them. So the next book that I read is Grimm's Fairy Tales. I saw this at a train station in Florence while I was traveling, and I am very easily persuaded by beautiful book covers. So they had loads of books that were, I guess, kind of printed in this like really beautiful hardcover design, and the Brothers Grimm fairy tales are something that I've always really wanted to read. So I bought this because I didn't have a copy of it. Now I'm very curious because a lot of these fairy tales, I wonder if any of you know the answer to this. I know that the story of the Little Mermaid isn't a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, is it? But I thought Sleeping Beauty was, and I thought there was like a version of the story where Sleeping Beauty, obviously that's like Disney version, but I guess that's just what I'm referring to it. I think her name is like Rosebud in this version or something. But I believe that there's a version of the story where like the prince's mom like wants to eat her children, is like an ogre or something. I don't know, something crazy. But that is not the version in this book, so I'm very curious of like, I don't know, these almost seem like a little bit less dark than I was expecting. Anyway, it's a very, very pretty book. It's a black book with kind of a silver moon with a wolf and some kind of like tree-like vine designs and silver flowers. It's very, very pretty. After those books, this is when I really got into audiobooks. I discovered the app Libby, which is an app that you can access audiobooks and like ebooks via your local library. So I was looking into kind of Audible and other subscription things. I know like Spotify has some audiobook aspects as well. But they've got like a 15-hour a month cap on it. And it's like, you know, however much money per month for a subscription. And I listen to way more than 15 hours a month of audiobooks. So, yeah, I didn't love that. I didn't like the financial element. Now Libby is free, and you can listen to as many hours as your heart desires. But it is through your library, so you're limited to your library's selection and the amount of copies. So you do oftentimes have to wait on wait lists. So some of these books that I read in the beginning were simply because they didn't have wait lists. I kind of put myself on wait lists for books that I really wanted to read. And then in the meantime, kind of started on some other ones. So the Book of Huga, like Hygge, Huga is the Danish word for essentially the act of coziness. So in Denmark, they have a practice called Huga, and it's something that, you know, like Denmark is viewed as the happiest, or is the happiest country in the world. And so Huga is kind of a practice to deal with the amount of darkness, like the daylight savings, or it's probably not called that there, but in Canada, you know, the winter, it gets dark at like 4 o'clock, so you get the seasonal depression very easily. And so the art of Huga is something that I've always been very fascinated by, and something that I would really like to kind of adapt into my life. That was the only book on Huga that was available for me to read right away. I gave it a 4 out of 10 because I didn't like it. There was a few things that I did really enjoy that I took away from it, but it was a very short book that felt like 90% of it was just a lot of words to kind of bulk it up, I guess. Like, there was a lot of just examples and metaphors and things that I didn't feel were very necessary. It was just a challenging read. It was like, even listening to it, it was quite boring. Anyway, sorry about that. I love Huga. It's just the way that book was written I found really not great. Was that a dog? Okay. The next book series that I read were the Wildwood books. So Wildwood, Under Wildwood, and Wildwood Imperium, which are young adult, I guess, novels. I did have a copy of the first book, but I lent it to my sister. My favorite animation studio, Leica, is making Wildwood into their next film that comes out this year. So I wanted to read these books before the movie came out so I could understand. They're definitely for younger people than me, but I loved them. They were really easy to get through. It was such a lighthearted kind of fantastical world. I just thought they were super fun. It's really nice to kind of read something that's not super heavy. I'm a very emotional person, so everything kind of affects me a lot more, like all of the feelings of things. So Wildwood was awesome because it was very just, I don't know, it was very nice. The world building was great. The characters were great. It was just lovely. I don't have anything bad to say about them. I gave the first one a 7.5 out of 10. This isn't like my rating of like out of all of the books I've read. It's like my rating for what they are. For like, this kind of young adult fantasy kind of world. I think that this is a 7.5 out of 10. And then Under Wildwood was my favorite one. I thought the characters and the world building in that one, like I almost kind of like visualized it in a stop motion world, I guess. And I don't know, I really liked that one. That was an 8 out of 10. And then the third one was the same as the first one, which is a 7.5. I thought they were really good. Yeah, I liked them a lot. I thought they were really cute, and I don't know what kind of age, maybe like probably similar age of like what you'd be to read Harry Potter, I guess. Maybe a little bit, no, yeah, I would say similar age to like Harry Potter. Yeah, I thought they were really cute and fun. The next book I read was Dracula, which I've already talked about my feelings on this. Despite having this physical copy, I did listen to the audiobook of this. Dracula. I also saw this version of Dracula at the train station when I saw this. And I liked the book so much that I asked for a physical copy of it for Christmas this year. So, Dracula I thought was a 10 out of 10. It was really awesome. I think listening to the audiobook version of it made a huge impact on how much I enjoyed it, because for those who don't know, Dracula is not the original kind of vampire novel, but it is one of the first and kind of created a lot of what we associate with the modern interpretation of vampires. So it is written basically as a compiled assortment of letters and notes and documents from lots of characters' different perspectives that are kind of put together to make one big story, really. So for that reason, I think the audiobook was really good, because you could hear different characters, which makes it a lot less confusing than if you were to just read it and kind of switch back and forth from everybody's perspective. But this book was just so good. Like, I think there's so many, like, this is, for me, the original kind of like heart and soul of vampires, I guess. And there's so many things in the media that come from this, kind of in the same way of like Shakespeare, how like so many movies are basically just adaptations of Shakespeare plays. So I feel like this is kind of the Shakespeare vampires. And just the original did it best. Like, it was just the best version of it, and it was awesome. I went to go see Nosferatu on Christmas Day this year, and I really, really loved it, and I'm happy that I read this book before I saw the movie. But yeah, this book was a 10 out of 10. It was so good. I just loved it. It was awesome. The language was, it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read or listened to was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And I didn't like Frankenstein that much. But hear me out. Why? Because the reason I didn't like Frankenstein as much. I did like it. Like, I can respect it for the kind of historical piece of literature that it is and the importance of it. And I do respect it. But I read Frankenstein immediately after Dracula, which I loved. And I read it right after the American election. And for those who don't know, Frankenstein is a very philosophical take on kind of like nurture versus nature and the creation of monsters. And the media surrounding the American election was so negative and awful and hard to endure. And reading Frankenstein after that, it feels like almost an incel story. Please don't crucify me for saying that. Obviously it's not, but it is kind of about, I guess a monster who is kind of derived of love and blames a lot of outward circumstances on his horrible actions and what made him become a monster, I guess. Which, I don't know. Obviously, there's more to it. It is a very philosophical book. It's extremely interesting. I did like it. It's a lot easier to follow than Dracula. But for me, it was, I don't know, wasn't the best. There's a little fly. The next book I listened to was The Danish Way of Parenting. This is also a very short book, and it was really awesome. I gave it a 8 out of 10. I think it was just very interesting. There was a lot that was based in fact and feeling and personal experience. I don't know how much there is to say about parenting books. I feel like I've already gone on so long about them. But I thought it was really interesting. Honestly, I was going to say if you were to read any of the parenting books on my list, I would recommend that one. I just really liked it. I thought it was really good. It's an easy read. It's worth reading if you're interested in that kind of thing. I thought it was great. And then the last books that I've read this year are the series A Court of Thorns and Roses. Despite having the physical books, I did also listen to these and loved them so much that I not only purchased the physical versions of the books, but also the audio versions of the books, my favorite ones. I didn't purchase all of the audio ones, but I absolutely went cuckoo bananas for this series. So I'm not on social media, but I know that this book series, Jack told me that this book series is very popular, and he said that kind of amongst the people who really enjoyed, he thought that I would really like it. So this was one of the books that I had my name on a waiting list for, and I listened to the series so fast. So I've read all of them, and I've rated all of them, and I'm here to talk about it. I'll give kind of a brief summary of, I will not spoil this series for you guys, because if you want to read it, I recommend it. Number one, what I will say is that you should be an adult, or this is not a family-friendly book. This is like a rated R book. Not this one specifically, but the series in general. So just take that as you will. It's definitely smut. So keep that in mind. But essentially the series is about a kind of, I guess, like a dystopian fantasy world where fairies are scary, mischievous creatures. that are kind of like myth, like monster stories, I guess. And it is about a young human woman who basically is forced to live in Prythian, which is the fairy realm. And what that ensues and what follows. I don't know how much I should say. I guess I could read the back. Yes, I could read the back. That's good. When 19-year-old huntress Feyre kills a wolf in the woods, a terrifying creature arrives to demand retribution. Dragged to a treacherous magical land she knows about only from legends, Feyre discovers that her captor is not truly a beast, but one of the lethal immortal fairies who once ruled her world. At least he's not a beast all the time. She adapts to her new home. Her feelings for the fairy Tamlin transforms from icy hospitality into fiery passion that burns through every lie she's been told about the beautiful, dangerous world of the Fae. But something is not right in the fairylands. An ancient, wicked shadow is growing, and Feyre must find a way to stop it or doom Tamlin and his world forever. So that's book 1. Book 1 I gave an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. So that is A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's book 1. It's very good. The next book, I actually don't have my physical copy because I lent it to my best friend who is reading it now, is A Court of Mist and Fury, which I gave a 10 out of 10. It was so good. I would say that it's pretty much widely regarded as the best book in the series. The rest of the rankings vary from person to person, but the best and worst book are pretty agreed upon. But that one is so good. I will not spoil. But I loved that book. It was that book from then on out. I was like hooked. The next one, I guess I could get the physical copy of the next one. So the next one is A Court of Wings and Ruin. So this is the third book. And I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this book for what it was, but I feel like the fact that the first one is just like the entry into the world, it gives it kind of like a special edge, I guess, that makes me like it a bit more. But A Court of Wings and Ruin is it's very nice. It's a great book for just like the world building element, and like discovering kind of like, I guess, the politics of the world, and yeah, it's very nice. Good book. The next one is the fourth book, and this is widely regarded as the worst book in the series, which I fully agree with, which is A Court of Frost and Starlight. As you can tell, it is much smaller than the other books. The second book is about the same size as this one. So yeah, this book I gave a 5 out of 10. I thought it's like, I understand why they wrote it, because it's very much like a transitional book into the next one, I guess. Like, and I'm reading it with some other people, so I have like some discussion going on. One of my friends made a good point that this is a nice break from everything always kind of like going wrong, or like it always being so intense. So I guess in that way it is nice. But I don't think that if I reread this series, I will honestly be rereading this one. I find that, like, I don't know, maybe I will. It's just, I don't know. And then the last one is A Court of Silver Flames, which I also have as a 10 out of 10. I did not think that people, like, I was looking up people's ratings of the book series, and A Court of Mist and Fury is like pretty much always everybody's number one, and then the rest of them kind of like vary. But I liked this one as much as I liked book 2. I thought it was so good. If this one might honestly, I might have liked it better. It was such a pleasant surprise. I won't like spoil anything, but it is written from, I guess it's following a different character than the other books. They kind of like explore in this book kind of the back and forth and like, you know, switching from different perspectives of different characters. And it feels like in the fourth book that, like, I don't know, it felt very experimental in the way they were doing it. But this book did not. And I found that the character it follows is a much more relatable protagonist. And I liked it a lot. I thought it was great. This is definitely the spiciest of the books as well, which also may be why I liked it the best. But I thought it was so good. I love this, and I don't know if it's like been announced or anything, but like there's most definitely going to be more to the series, which I cannot wait. But yeah. So those are all of the books that I read in 2024. I liked Dracula and the Aquitar series the best out of all of them. Thought they were really good. I loved whatever. I'm so deep into this book series. I can't even handle it. I started reading a book that I'm very excited about, and that it is really good. The Poppy War. So that will be my first book of 2025. And it is really good. It's just so hard because I have such an obsessive personality that, like, once I become very attached to something, it's very difficult for me to pry my attention from it. So I guess it's just a hard act to follow, but yeah, we will prevail. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and